G'day mates, it's Busta here. So just quickly before the video begins guys, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the author of this story and let you guys know that she's actually turning the series into a book. So if you would like to thank the author for her hard work and possibly even pick up a copy of the book, I left a link in the description for you guys to check out. Also, just a heads up guys that the story is left a little unfinished at the end of the video, but I've actually left a link to the ending of the story for you guys to read if you would like. The reason for this is that the rest of the story was actually written by another author in a collab style feature piece, and I just didn't have time to nail down permission for it, so if you would like to know more, feel free to check out the link. Also, if you're enjoying the series, it looks like the author may still have some more stories on the way, and if you guys would like me to continue the series, please leave a like and a comment below, and if I can get enough support, I'll talk to the author about getting permission to do some more. Anyway guys, sorry to keep you hanging. I know some of you guys hate this type of stuff, but it was kind of necessary, and without further ado, let's begin. So in case you don't know, I'm a rookie cop in a small rural Pennsylvanian town, currently stuck working the night shift. I work your normal patrol shift, driving around, pulling traffic, responding to your usual domestic disputes and whatever other wonderful calls dispatch sends my way. I responded to some bizarre calls the other week, and right as I thought life was returning to normal, I now find myself in the eye of yet another unsettling investigation. Dispatch to 1034. 1034, go ahead. Hey, we just got a call from a woman who said that she came home from work and can't find her daughter anywhere. She was very distraught and the call taker was not able to obtain much additional information. Can you please respond to this address for a potential missing child report? The dispatch provided me the address and I started towards the house. I didn't activate my lights and siren because 9 times out of 10, these missing children end up being rebellious teenagers who don't feel like coming straight home from after school or something. I approached the old farmhouse and noticed the beautiful flowers planted out front. It reminded me of my Aunt Maggie's house, in fact. I exited my cruiser and before I even approached the front porch, a woman came running outside hysterically. "Officer, please help. We can't find our daughter." Shit. My husband was supposed to be watching her today since he was off from work, and when I got home, she just wasn't here. Her words poured out of her mouth faster than they could pour into my ears. "Ma'am, I understand that you're very upset, but I need you to slow down so I can listen to everything you're saying. I'm Officer Barkley, but please feel free to call me Sarah, okay?" As I held up my hands to motion her to slow down, a man walked out of the house. "Officer, I'm David Fitz, the father." David reached his hand towards me. He was visibly shaking, but spoke much more clearly than his wife. He added, "My wife here is Catherine. Our daughter is missing, and I was with her all day today, and I must have fallen asleep on the couch. I know, it was stupid of me." David's glance dropped to the ground, and he shook his head. "I don't know how I fell asleep, but whenever Catherine came home, it woke me up, and we can't find Emma anywhere." David walked 3 steps to his left and put his arms around his wife to console her. I reached into my vest pocket and got out my notepad. "I'm going to help you find your daughter, okay? I just need to ask you a few standard questions before I go out looking for her, though, alright?" David shook his head in agreement. I asked, "So, how old is Emma?" She's 6. "And what does she look like?" "She has long brown hair, green eyes, and she was wearing yellow overalls today because we were outside planting." I wrote down everything he was saying, and I asked, "When exactly was the last time you saw her, and where?" Let's see, I know I had turned on the evening news, and she sat on the couch with me. That must have been at 5. Does Emma have any illnesses that would be cause for concern, including mental?" This time, Catherine spoke. "No, she's a perfect little child. There's nothing wrong with her, and she wouldn't just go wandering off by herself. She's smart for her age. In the academy, we're taught one of the first steps in handling a missing child case is to check the entire house first. Very often, small children like to hide in the house as a game. I have several additional questions for you both, but would you mind if I first look around your house? David and Catherine let me into their home, and I worked my way from the top to the bottom. I started with the attic, and there was nothing. I checked every single bedroom and took my time in Emma's room to look for any clues as to where she may have gone. I naturally sensed that she left on her own accord because this is such a small town. But we don't deal with kidnapping, aside from custody battles, that is. I finished my thorough search of the home with absolutely no luck, though, and I went back outside to ask David and Catherine additional questions since it appears that this is becoming a real missing child case. Do you have a photograph of your daughter? Catherine began running into the house. Yes, I'll be right back. After approximately 30 seconds, Catherine came back outside with a photograph of Emma. It was a newspaper clipping of her. I was expecting a normal photograph, but I asked, I see that she was in the newspaper. What for? As a cop, I'm naturally curious about this. This paper's from a few months ago. You said that your name was Sarah, right? Catherine didn't get to finish explaining why Emma was in the newspaper before a switch turned on in her head and she was redirected. Yes, ma'am. Sarah, do you have any children? No, ma'am. Oh, all right then. I won't expect you to understand what we're going through then, but I need you to get every single officer out there looking for our baby, okay? I understood Catherine's concerns, so I radioed to dispatch the description of Emma and a summary of what had happened. I had every officer circulate the area to look for her, and I requested that Sergeant Oakley arrive to our scene. Sergeant Oakley arrived and took me off to the side. All right, Barkley, you seem to have the most information right now. I'm going to go finish up on the paperwork here and the questioning. I need you to go start canvassing the area and talk to any nearby neighbors in case they saw this little girl in the past few hours, all right? I got in my cruiser and started back towards the road. I saw a house not too far up on the right, so I started in that direction. I pulled up to a red brick home and I knocked on the door, and an older woman opened the door. Hello, officer. What seems to be the problem? I hear a lot of commotion outside. The woman peeked around the side of me, looking towards all of the police cruisers up the road. Yeah, well, there's a little girl who went missing. Emma Fitz? The woman slightly turned her head to the side and appeared a little confused. After about 3 seconds, she responded. Well, yeah, does this mean you found her? Now, I was thoroughly confused. No, ma'am, I'm here because we're all looking for her. Have you seen her? No, officer, but may I ask why you've now begun looking for Emma again, nearly 10 years after she went missing? Is this woman crazy, or what if she's right and David and Catherine Fitz were just having a psychotic breakdown or something? I mean, I've certainly seen people have mental breakdowns and relive their past, but I've never seen two people at the exact same time have the same mental breakdown. Something doesn't add up here. I remembered that I still had the photograph that Catherine gave me in my pocket, and I reached into my pocket and took out the photograph. Ma'am, is this a photograph of Emma Fitz that you said went missing 10 years ago? But the woman grabbed her reading glasses off of her head and set them on her nose. She reached over and slowly took the newspaper clipping out of my hand. After studying the photograph for nearly 10 seconds, she responded. No, this isn't that girl. I remember because Emma had blonde curly hair like Shirley Temple. Every time I saw her, I would call her Shirley, and she would get so mad and yell at me, saying, "My name isn't Shirley, it's Emma." The woman quietly laughed as she relived the memory. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Oh, I'm sorry, officer. Yeah, I'm Judith. I still was deciding whether or not I believed everything that Judith was telling me, but I had to investigate her knowledge further. So, what happened to Emma Fitz's parents after she went missing? Are they the same people who currently live there? Judith shook her head and her expression grew serious again. No, they moved out about a year after Emma went missing. They were just so depressed that they just grew apart, and they blamed each other for Emma's disappearance. Such a shame if you ask me. Even after they moved though, that house sat there for nearly 3 years. Everyone around here knew what happened and didn't want to move into that house because there were just rumors about Emma's disappearance somehow being related to that house. Judith threw her hands in the air at this point. Oh, but you know how weird these small town people can get. They think everything is haunted around here. What do you know about the people that moved into the house? Was their last name also Fitz? Well, it's been over 6 years since that couple moved in, and I never got to meet them. Right after they moved in, I tried to take brownies over to them, but they weren't home, so I left the brownies on their front porch with a note. They never said thank you or stopped by, so I didn't bother going out of my way to speak to them. The most I see them is when they drive by my house and turn down their lane. I did find it odd, though, that they never took the Fitz name off of the mailbox, but whatever, I guess. I thanked Judith for her time and let her know that I would possibly be stopping back over tomorrow. So, is it just sheer coincidence that David and Catherine have the same last name as the previous owners and have a daughter with the same name as their daughter? That's not possible. Surely not. There's no way that that's just a coincidence. There's something else going on here, and I'm now determined to get to the bottom of it. I eventually headed back to the station for an impromptu shift meeting, and I was one of the first to arrive back at the station, and I saw a good friend of mine. Tim came up to me and asked, "Some weird shit, right?" I hadn't told anyone the information that I got from Judith yet, so I wasn't sure exactly what Tim was referring to, so I asked, "What exactly do you mean?" Tim looked surprised. "Come on, kid. You lived here back then. Even if you weren't a cop, I'm sure you remember hearing about how Emma Fitz went missing from that house like 10 years ago." "Actually, no. I honestly don't remember that. But you know how my dad always tried to keep me sheltered from what was going on in this town because he didn't want me worried about what he did at work every day. Honestly, though, I'm really confused, Tim. If that girl went missing 10 years ago, then what the hell happened today? Who are David and Catherine?" Before Tim could answer me, Sergeant Oakley walked in along with the last 2 officers that we were waiting on. Sergeant Oakley announced, "All right, everyone. I called this shift meeting to talk about what's going on with this Emma Fitz case. There's going to be a lot of media on this one, and there's a lot of weird confusion that's with this case. For those of you that weren't around 10 years ago," Sergeant Oakley paused and looked right at me. It's always nice to be reminded that I'm the rookie in the room. Sergeant Oakley continued. "There was a little girl named Emma Fitz who went missing from that same house. We could never find her, and then today, we found out another girl named Emma Fitz went missing from that same house. I know how fucked up this sounds, which is why we're here, so I can explain to everyone the conversation that I had with Mr. David Fitz and Mrs. Catherine Fitz. They aren't from this area, so when they moved here 6 years ago for David's job, they were tight on money and couldn't afford much for a house, but since Catherine was pregnant at the time, they needed a home that could comfortably accommodate their new baby. They found that house for almost half of what the market value was, and as soon as they found out, the reason that the house was so damn cheap was because there was one huge contingency that the sellers required for the buyers to do. They required whoever bought their home to change their last name to Fitz. They wanted all official documents, white pages, everything relating to that address to have the name Fitz on it in case their daughter Emma ever tried to find their way home. David and Catherine thought it over, but ultimately, they decided to take the offer and change their last name. The previous owners left their new addresses and phone numbers for David and Catherine, and David told me that they still regularly get phone calls from them to make sure that no one new has moved into the house. Everyone around Amber Forest has their own opinions on that house, but since they weren't from the area, they didn't view the house negatively just because a girl was kidnapped from it, and I can't blame them, to be honest. I think it's stupid how paranoid people get about some of the house's histories around here, but I digress. Sergeant Oakley took a big sip of his hot coffee. I asked, "So then, why the hell did they name their daughter Emma? That's just creepy." Sergeant Oakley responded, "Yeah, I agree, Barkley. I asked the same damn thing, and they said that they had no idea the prior tenant's daughter was named Emma. They just knew that there was a little girl that went missing. Catherine was really upset when I told her that the little girl's name was actually Emma Fitz. She started shaking and said that she didn't know what made her choose that name. Her husband chimed in and told me that he remembered exactly how Catherine chose the name Emma. One night while Catherine was pregnant, she dreamt about walking down the hallway into their nursery and she saw the name Emma written on the wall. I guess she's into that mumbo-jumbo on signs or whatever, so she decided the dream was a sign to name their daughter Emma." My next question was one that everyone in the room was thinking. "So, Chief, what the hell do we do from here?" "Well, we're going to need to talk to the original Fitzes and reopen the original missing Emma Fitz case." "Hey there, I'm Officer Barkley. Thank you so much for taking the time to drive up here and talk with us." The male reached out his hand. "Hey there, I'm Roger Fitz. This is my wife, a former wife, Lisa. You mentioned on the phone that you needed to speak with us about our daughter's disappearance. Have you found a—" Roger could barely finish his sentence without choking on his own words. "Have you found a body?" "No, I'm sorry to say that we don't have any developments relating to your daughter's disappearance. We actually have another disappearance of a young girl, 6 years old, and we think these two cases could potentially be related." Lisa looked confused. "Well, what makes you think that they're related? I'm sure there have been other children that have gone missing over the years as well, right?" I took a deep exhale as I prepared to explain the eerie similarities to the Fitz. Roger and Lisa were genuinely shocked, not only to hear about the latest disappearance, but also to find out that she was also named Emma. I continued. "And so, given these similarities, that's why we asked you both to come speak with us. Do you guys have any ideas or inclinations as to what could have happened to both your daughter and the other Emma Fitz?" Lisa repeatedly shook her head. She slowly muttered, "That fucking house. I told you, it's that fucking house." Roger consoled Lisa. Roger saw that I was intrigued by Lisa's comment, and he added, "Lisa's not fond of that house. She always thought that the house had something to do with Emma's disappearance." I wasn't sure exactly where he was going with this, so I asked, "What do you mean when you say the house had something to do with the disappearance?" "Oh, I'm not saying that I believe it, but Lisa here has always been adamant that the house was haunted, I guess. She had dreams about Emma disappearing several nights prior to her disappearance." I stopped taking notes at this point and focused on actively listening. "How do you think the house contributed to her disappearance, then?" I asked Roger my question, although it was clearly directed to Lisa. To my surprise, Lisa answered, "That house is pure evil." Lisa intensely stared at me as she responded. I left the interview room and went back out into the break room to find Sergeant Oakley gulping down a cup of coffee. "Hey Sarge, you're not going to believe the original Fitz's theory on what happened to their daughter. They think the house was haunted." "Ah, shit. Not another crazy couple. This town is fucking filled with crazies who believe in that junk. Maybe I'm the crazy one for thinking that they'd be more helpful with this search. I know you searched the house earlier, but I want to go back over there with more men and do an intense search." It was hard not to take Sergeant Oakley's request as an insult to my ability to search a home, but given the intensity of this case, I understood his decision. I offered to be one of the officers who went back to the house, and Oakley was happy to hear my willingness. Tim, Peterson, and I, we all went back to the house, and we started in the attic, which was practically empty. We then worked our way to the second floor and made our way through each room. We checked closets, dressers, under beds, absolutely everywhere. And we had no luck finding Emma. We continued on to the main floor, though, and checked all of the kitchen pantry cupboards, the closets, even the basket of blankets sitting next to the couch. Lastly, we worked our way into the basement. It was a small basement that consisted of one main unfinished room with a toilet in the corner. It was common to have toilets in these old homes because back when this was a coal mining town, the men would enter the house through the basement and use the toilet and shower before heading upstairs into the main home. I heard Tim quietly mumble, "What the hell?" And then he followed up with a louder, "Hey guys, come check this out." Peterson and I headed over to where Tim was standing, just under the stairwell. Tim was shining his flashlight against a small cubbyhole door. The door didn't have a handle on it, and it only had a plain silver faceplate with no keyhole and no mechanism on it. I leaned in close to look into the crack between the cubby door and the frame and saw that there was a deadbolt securing the door shut. "What the hell is this?" I said. "This cubby can only be locked from the inside." Peterson ran out to his cruiser to grab the breaching kit that he was assigned. The breaching kit included any and all tools that we would need to open a door. He returned about 30 seconds later, and we shoved a crowbar-like tool into the cubbyhole. After Tim made a few attempts, he finally got the door open, and we found a girl laying on the floor, holding on tightly to a stuffed bear. She wasn't responding when I asked her if she was all right, and I crawled into the cubby space and dragged her out. She was wearing yellow overalls, and I placed my pointer and middle fingers to her neck and felt for a pulse. It was weak, but she still had a pulse. I immediately called for medics and repeatedly attempted to get a response from her. She slowly opened her eyes but was unable to speak. It had been nearly 24 hours since she went missing. Medics arrived on the scene, and I rode in the ambulance with her to the hospital. Tim and Peterson remained on the scene to gather evidence to determine if any foul play was involved. Sergeant Oakley met me at the hospital. Sergeant Oakley came up to me outside of Emma's room where she was being treated, and he advised me, "Yeah, I spoke with the guys, and it sounds like Emma just locked herself in that cubby. There's no way anyone else locked her in there, and there was nothing inside of that cubby that appeared suspect. In other words, this was just yet again the typical outcome of a child hiding in their own home. But for some reason, she must have just not been able to get the lock open again." I replied, "Wow, that must have been so terrifying for her. Are you sure that the parents had nothing to do with it? Why didn't they hear her scream? Why did her mum hand me that newspaper photograph instead of a real one?" Sergeant Oakley shrugged his shoulders. "Those old houses are built pretty solid. Maybe they couldn't hear her scream from all the way upstairs, especially if they had an AC unit running or some other appliance or something. I agree that it was weird that she chose to give you a newspaper clipping, but that isn't a crime. I mean, these young millennials nowadays, they don't even keep printed photographs around the house anymore. Sure, they take pictures when they have babies and keep them in frames, but after that, all they do is post them on social media. Maybe that was just the most recent photograph that she had." While still suspicious, everything Sergeant Oakley theorized, it was possible, I guess. I waited at the hospital until Emma's parents came to see her, and they went running into her room and cried while grasping their daughter. I let them become reacquainted with their daughter before asking Emma any questions. I waited until her parents were there because, well, it's not advised to question a minor without her parents present. I introduced myself. "Hi, Emma. My name's Sarah, and I'm a police officer. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?" Emma smiled and said, "Sure. So, you gave your parents quite the scare with hiding in that cubbyhole, hey? Why did you go down there?" "Well, I was playing hide and seek, but I couldn't open the door after I closed it, and then I fell asleep." "And why did you go down into that cubbyhole?" "Emma wanted to go in there." Catherine corrected Emma. "Emma, remember what we talked about before? Just try not to refer to yourself as Emma. Just say I or me when you're talking about yourself, okay, sweetie?" Emma responded to her mum. "Yeah, I remember, Mum, I know, but I'm talking about the other little girl with the same name as me." I quietly made my exit and headed back to the station, and I told Sergeant Oakley that he was right. Emma was just a kid who'd found a place to hide and accidentally got herself locked in the cubbyhole, and he could tell Roger and Lisa Fitz that they were free to go back home. Roll call ended around 23:15 hours, and only a few minutes later, a dispatch called me over the radio. "Dispatch to 1034. 1034, go ahead. Can you please respond to Elmer Lane for a missing person report? A woman just called in and said that her husband hasn't been home in several hours and that she can't get a hold of him. 10-4, show me en route." Missing husband calls almost always result in the husband stumbling home in the early morning hours from the bar and being greeted by a furious wife. I made my way to Elmer Lane, though, and pulled in front of a quaint little farmhouse sitting in the middle of several acres of land. I walked up to the front door and knocked 3 times before announcing myself. "Officer Barkley, with the police department." A woman opened the front door. She had long, wavy, dirty blonde hair, and her mascara was running down her cheeks. She wiped away a few tears with the tissue that she was holding in her left hand. "Officer, thank you so much for coming. I know I'm a complete mess, but my husband's missing and I'm worried something bad has happened." I followed her into her home and was immediately hit in the face with the stench of fire. "Ma'am, is there a fire? What do I smell?" She hurried to the kitchen and pointed to the stove. "Well, Jason had dinner in the oven, and when I got home from work, it was just completely burnt. I took it out of the oven, and I haven't got a chance to throw it out yet. I'm sorry. I've been trying to call everyone I know to ask if they've seen Jason." I stared at the blackened chicken. The smell was overwhelming, mind you, and I said, "All right, well, I'm here to help figure things out and help you find your husband. I'm going to ask you a few questions. First, what's your name?" "Oh, sure. I'm Lisa Graham," she responded as she sniffled. "Okay, Lisa, let's start from the beginning. When was the last time you spoke to Jason?" She thought for a moment and then said, "Probably around noon, I'd say. I texted him during my lunch break and asked him what he was planning to make for dinner." "So he was home all day while you were at work. Tell me, what exactly happened?" Lisa nodded her head. "Yeah, he's a paramedic, so he works really odd hours, and today was his day off. I work at Dr. Weiss's office downtown, and am usually home around 5 p.m, and we had an emergency patient at the end of the day, so I didn't get home until after 7. I had texted Jason telling him that I would be late, but he just never replied, and when I got home, I found the chicken burning in the oven. He had set it to broil, which he usually does after he puts the glaze on, but the entire chicken was black when I got home. His car was out front, and he won't answer his phone, and his wallet is sitting on his nightstand. I'm pretty sure that he didn't go anywhere, and it's like he vanished into thin air. Nobody has heard anything from him." I scribbled notes as Lisa told me her story. "So, were the doors locked when you came home?" Yeah, I used my key to come through the front door, and I remember hearing the lock click open. I always listen for it because Jason sometimes leaves it unlocked, and when I come home and find it unlocked, I always joke that I don't want someone coming here and kidnapping him." Lisa began sobbing at this point. "And now it's not a fucking joke. Where is he?" I can see that all the windows are open. Were they open when you came home?" Lisa shook her head. No, I opened them to help get the smell of the burnt chicken out. They were all locked before I opened them." "Are there any other entrances to your home besides the front door and the windows? Do you have a cellar door or something?" Well, we have the rear door to the porch, and yeah, we have a cellar door. Our cellar door is locked with a padlock on the outside, and you'd need a key to open it. I haven't checked it, though. Do you think someone got in through a cellar or something?" "Yeah, before we continue, just let me go quickly check, okay?" Lisa guided me outside to the cellar door. There was a padlock on the doors, and I decided to grab the lock and pull to make sure it was actually locked, and it was. "That's the lock right there." Lisa assured me that nobody broke into the house through the cellar door. We made our way to the rear porch door, and I grabbed the handle and pulled, and it was also locked. I turned to Lisa. "All right, well, there seems to be no signs of an intrusion. I suppose it's possible someone could have locked the front door behind them, though." I trailed off as I thought out loud. Lisa stopped me. "No, actually, you need a key to lock the front door from the outside. It was the top bolt that was locked when I got home, and it doesn't make any sense." "Okay, so it sounds like Jason might have gone somewhere on his own then?" Lisa shook her head. "No, I thought about that too, but his keys are still here, so he couldn't have locked the door behind him. Plus, his car is still here. We live miles away from anything, and we sit in the middle of acres of land. He's not going to just walk anywhere. He was in the middle of making dinner." I could tell that Lisa's mind hadn't stopped spinning since she got home from work over 4 hours ago. I had an idea, though. It wasn't a pleasant thought, but maybe Jason went out into the field and was in an accident while he was mowing the grass or something. "Can you show me where you keep your lawnmower and other tractors and whatnot?" Sure, yeah, they're all out in the barn." Lisa grabbed her jacket for the short walk, and I followed her to the barn. Lisa opened the barn door, and then she said, "Here." "Can you tell me if any of the machines are missing?" Lisa looked around. No, everything's here. Nothing's missing. What are you thinking, officer?" I was honest with her. "Look, I don't want to cause you concern, but I wondered if it was possible that Jason had an accident while tending to the land or something." Lisa listened closely to what I had just suggested. She began to cry again, and tears rolled down her face and dripped onto the old barn floor. "He wasn't supposed to go like this. He can't be gone. We just got here. I'm not saying that that's what happened. It's just something we need to consider. Did you two just move here? I just meant that we're starting our lives together. We got married a year ago." We headed back up to the house, and I did another check of the perimeter. There's no way that someone forced their way into that house today. Jason had obviously left on his own, but then that leaves the question, where did he go? Did he walk? Did someone pick him up? Why would he leave dinner on broil in the oven if he was leaving? Lisa was right. It was like he just vanished into thin air. Lisa received a text message and pulled her phone out of her pocket. And she looked afraid. Oh, man, I'm so sorry for wasting your time, officer, but Jason's all right. I really can't tell you how sorry I am, too. I'm so embarrassed." Lisa was speaking with her hands and walked over to the front door. She opened the door and leaned against the edge of the door. "Thank you again, officer. It looks like we won't be needing you after all." In only a few seconds, she went from hysteria to nearly shoving me out of her house. But since she was my only complaint, if she retracted her missing person claim, then I had nothing further to pursue, and I had to respect her wishes for me to leave. I left the house and headed towards my cruiser, and I unlocked the driver's side door and climbed back into the driver's seat. There was condensation all over my windshield from the muggy weather that we tend to get this time of year, and I ran my windshield wipers a few passes to clear my view. I put my cruiser into reverse and glanced up to the rearview mirror, and written in my rear window was the word help. I threw my cruiser back into park, jumped out and ran around to the rear window. I looked around and no one was in sight. I leaned in closer and began wiping my hand at the writing, and it wasn't coming off. I walked to the rear passenger door and it was locked. I opened the driver's side door and pressed the button to unlock all the car doors, and I crawled into the back seat and wiped my hand across the rear window. The writing was from inside my vehicle. After I was sure that nobody was in my cruiser, I got back into the driver's seat and continued heading down the long driveway. I caught myself nervously glancing in my rearview mirror repeatedly, and I reminded myself to keep my eyes on the road. That is, until something in my mirror caught my eye. I saw a guy sitting in my back seat, and he looked like he was screaming. I could almost hear his screams, but nothing came out of his mouth, and I slammed on my brakes, unholstered my taser, and turned around, and my back seat was empty. I began to think that I was going crazy. The lack of sleep and creepy farms must have finally gotten to my brain. Regardless, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this entire case. I turned off my cruiser lights and sat at the end of the driveway, tucked around the bend, mind you, and I just waited. I'm not sure what exactly I was waiting for until I saw Lisa's car drive down and turn right out of her driveway. I decided to follow her from a safe distance. She drove down the road to the closest neighbor's house. It actually looked pretty big, too. Whoever lived here, they definitely had some money. I parked my cruiser away from the residence, and once I saw Lisa walk into the house, I walked around the side of the house and watched through the window. Lisa immediately wrapped her arms around a man, and he returned the gesture. The man held his hand against Lisa's long blonde hair and slowly stroked his fingers through it. Then he grabbed her by her hair and pulled her into a long heated kiss. And Lisa, well, she didn't resist. What the hell is going on here? Lisa is clearly having an affair on her husband, Jason. But does this mean that everything earlier was just an act? Or was she really concerned? Lisa and the man started walking towards the porch, so I ran around the back of the house, and there wasn't much concealment, so I headed towards the woods. I began running from one tree to the next, and my heart felt like it was about to beat right out of my chest. I'm fairly in shape, so I don't know why such a short run hit me so hard. I was about to dodge behind a tree, too, when I twisted my damn knee and fell into a hole. The hole was probably a good 3 feet deep, and man, it smelt horrid. I didn't want to use my flashlight out of fear of being seen, so I reached down to feel what I was kneeling on, and I felt hair. I closed my eyes as I cautiously moved my hand lower, and I felt nose and then a mouth. I used my other hand to cover my mouth to stop my screams. The body was cold and smelled like death. I hoisted myself out of the hole and felt the pain in my chest again, and I waited until it was clear, and I ran back to my cruiser and radioed for backup. Backup arrived, and I told them about the body, and I wasn't able to keep my eyes on Lisa since I ran back to my cruiser, which was out of view from the house. I didn't want to use my portable radio out of fear that they would have been able to hear it. By the time that we approached the house, it was empty. Lisa and the man were just nowhere to be found. I walked Sergeant Oakley over to the shallow grave that I had fallen in and shined my flashlight in it while I turned to him and explained. "Yeah, this is where the body is." Sergeant Oakley looked down and then back at me. "What?" I looked down at the empty grave, and where did the body go? "Sarge, they must have seen me. They must have moved the body." I started to become frantic. Yeah, it's alright. I'm going to send forensics over here to test the soil, alright? If the body was here, they'll find something, don't worry. Forensics finished processing the scene, and I headed back to the station to finish my report. I walked past the roll call room and turned the corner and continued past our holding cell. As I walked by, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone inside. I poked my head in the video room next door, which is where the officers sit to watch our suspects in the holding cell. Nobody was there, though. I looked around and I didn't see any officers, but they were all still back at the scene. I walked back to the holding cell and I saw a guy sitting with his head in his hands. I asked, "Hey, what's your name?" He slowly lifted his head up and looked around. Are you talking to me?" Yeah, who else would I be talking to? What's your name? He became excited and answered, I'm Jason. Holy shit. Wait right there, okay? I'll be right back. I was in complete disbelief that Jason was sitting in front of me. I really thought that it was going to be his body in the grave that I found. I ran into the video room to make sure that it was actively recording because I wanted to make sure to have his story on video. I was happy to see that it was recording, so I ran back to the holding cell and he was gone. How could he have gotten out? I ran back into the video center to review the footage and see where he went, and the red light was off and it wasn't recording. I just checked it and made sure it was recording. My chest began to feel heavy again and I sat down and caught my breath. I'm worried that I'm hallucinating or something, and I'm too embarrassed to tell anyone what's happening. I mean, I'm a cop. I need to be reliable. I can't be hallucinating. Sergeant Oakley arrived back to the station at this point. Barkley, we need to talk, okay? Yes, Sarge? Listen, forensics was on the scene for over an hour and they couldn't find one single drop of blood, a piece of cloth, or any evidence that a body was in that hole. Listen, I'm not calling you a liar, but I'm letting you know that things aren't looking too good on this case. No body, no crime, right? We can't even prove that you didn't just fall into a Halloween decoration or something. Sarge, that was not a Halloween decoration. I felt attacked. Sergeant Oakley shook his hand in front of his face. No. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that we can't open a murder case without being sure a murder ever happened. Well, what about Lisa and that neighbor? Oh, yeah, well, we looked into them, and the neighbor is Amber Hughes, a well-known lawyer in the area. We were able to locate them down the road at the local diner. It looks like they had some late-night cravings. Sergeant Oakley smirked at his own innuendo. Anyway, they were oblivious, and we questioned them and got nothing. And we have no reason to believe that they committed a crime other than cheating. Well, what about her husband, Jason? She tried to report him missing earlier. Where is he? Sergeant Oakley nodded his head. Yeah, well, Lisa said that things have been rough between them and Jason just left her. She doesn't know where he is, but said that he texted her earlier saying that he left her. This isn't right. I mean, I just saw Jason. He didn't seem like he was in a rush to go live a bachelor life or anything. But what can I do? I don't have a body. I don't have a crime. I can't just go and investigate someone I think is a missing person. I need to have someone make the complaint, whether it's Jason's parents, a co-worker, a friend, anyone. But so far, nobody is claiming that he's missing. I need somebody or anybody to file a missing report so that I can look into Jason's disappearance. But without that, all I can do is just go home and curl up with Haley and return to work for another day's shift. When I got home and settled onto my couch with Haley on my lap, I got a phone call. Hello? I could hear static. Then a male spoke. Listen, the body you found earlier, it was me.